Isn't it great to be here? Yeah, that's good to hear. You hear that? Amen. Because it is. It's, what did I... Sorry, I'm getting code from my wife to straighten my tie or something. Okay, all right. Show's done. All right. If you're visiting with us, you have blessed us by coming, and we hope that you've been blessed by being here. We are thrilled that you came to join us and to share in our praise of God and to add your voice to our song. We hope that you feel like you've been blessed to be here, because we are. We who live here, who come here again and again, this is our habit, it is our life rhythm. We come back to this place again and again and again. I'm so glad we didn't get a snow day on Sunday. If you get a snow day on Sunday, I don't know what to do with the week. Nothing feels right, because I live and breathe coming here. Now, I'm the preacher, and maybe that makes me a little weird as part of my job. But I don't think that I'm the only one who feels this way, because I just saw a lot of people nod. We who are, this is our home. This is our family. We look forward to being together with family, to have our faith encouraged, to have our walk with Christ encouraged, to be able to serve each other and to keep moving forward in this Christian journey. And if you're here, that means you're interested enough in Christianity. If you're not a Christian, you are willing to check it out. We hope you'll come back again and again and again, because we who do it know you will be blessed if you come here. Your life will be different and stronger if you live it in church. If you live as part of a church, if you're connected to the life of the church, if the Spirit is working through the church and in you, and you start giving to the church. I'm not talking about what we just did here. I'm talking about your own heart. You change because of church. And if it's with God, that changes for the better. I don't know how I would face the crises of life without church. I don't know how I would get through the troubles that come without brothers and sisters to carry me through. And without my God to again and again say, I love you. You are mine. I paid the ultimate price for you. And that's what happens every time we come here. Every time we take that meal, we remember the price that was paid for me by God. And what He considers me to be worth is worth coming. So if you're visiting here, come again, please. And as Don so eloquently said, if you're not a Christian, please talk to one of us who are, because we would love to share with you why this way of life is the best way of life. It just is. Following Jesus is the best way of life that there is. This morning, the screens behind me are dark, and they're going to stay that way, because this morning we are talking about adultery and lust. And frankly, I don't want to get on Google and look at the kind of stuff that I would have to inadvertently see to search for imagery to represent that. I don't want to see it, because it's all over the place, folks. And you don't have to try to see it to see it. I won't tell you what the innocuous search was that a friend of mine did the other day, but it was for a kind of tool that you would use in like carpentry, right? In repairing a house. And I won't tell you this because I don't want to feed anybody who might accidentally want to see some naked people. But they looked for this, and it was the third search picture that came up in Google was a naked woman. It is so pervasive in our society. Society is so let go of the concept of purity and the concept of fidelity that it is just everywhere. So as you look at the blank screens, please let them make a statement to you. Some of us need to darken our screens. There are things that are so tempting and so dangerous and so out there. Make it a discipline sometimes to step away from your screen. And certainly, if the devil begins to ensnare you by one of your accidental searches, you know, the merchants of illicit sexuality are so clever. They will put fake websites that will be like, if you would type .gov into it instead of .com, you'd get the real thing. You'd get like the government website. But you'll go and you think you're going to do your taxes. And instead you're seeing things that you never bargained on seeing. That you wonder, how am I going to unsee that now? We live in such a dangerous world. Such a corrupt and broken world. And we live in a world where there's a hunger for that, or it wouldn't be there. People don't sell what no one buys. People don't market what there is no market for. Our culture is hungry. And what it is willing to satisfy its hunger with is so cheap and so gaudy and so broken, and it is breaking us. It wasn't so very many years ago that I could have said the name Miley Cyrus. And what we would have thought about, if any of us knew about it, was someone delightful. A young girl on a comedy show about a man raising his 2 kids. A Disney program. A happy show. If I say the words Miley Cyrus, what do you think about now? You know, I'm sorry I even said it. Because we came to church and we don't want to think about latex. Right? Our culture is so broken. At the heart of it is a hunger, a need for love. But our culture, like so many cultures, has taken that hunger and twisted it. That hunger has a purpose. Just like the hunger for food has a purpose, right? If a hunger exists, if a longing exists, it's because God built us to have that longing, right? But just like our culture abuses its hunger for food, and it encourages us to abuse our hunger for food. And how many of us have fallen into that trap? Right? And we wear the evidence in our waistlines, right? But just as our culture has made that error, our culture has made this error too. And has treated the hunger for physical intimacy as though its purpose were pleasure and really very little more. And as that becomes increasingly the case, marriages are increasingly in trouble. Sensuality is at the heart of marriage. It is. Married life is meant to be a very intimate life where we undo the damage done to us in the garden. Because in the garden we realized we were naked and we ran. And we hid from each other and we hid from God and we hid from ourselves. Marriage is the only place where it's really appropriate to undo that damage. Where we can be naked and unashamed. And where we can celebrate with each other the wonder of the love that God has given to us. That's what that hunger is for. It is to drive us to covenant, to drive us to commitment, and to help us to maintain covenant marriage. That's what it's for. It is the celebration of covenant love. It is the act that celebrates what's happening all the time in the Christian marriage. That great ecstasy of that moment is meant to be the celebration of the overall relationship, the whole thing. And why do we have that relationship anyway? Well, if you go back to the very beginning of the human race, when God had created the man, when God had created Adam, He said it's not good for Adam to be alone. That's the first thing that God assessed and said, this isn't good. It's not good for this person to be alone. Why? Well, we know now. A Hebrew mind might not have known that and might not have thought it's just not a good human condition. But we now know it's because we were created to bear the image of God, and God is not a singularity. God is not alone. Our marriages, folks, are meant to bear the image of God. In your married life together, you can bear the image of the self-giving God in a way that you can never do by yourself. You can't bear His image alone. You must have others. You must have them. Because God has within Himself others. Father loves Son, Son loves Father. They both love Spirit. They are loved by Spirit. The Christian experience has revealed this triune God. And so to bear the image of God, we need each other. No other human relationship becomes more intimate than the married relationship. There is no other relationship that we celebrate with physical intimacy the way we do marriage. No other human relationship, therefore, allows us to bear self-gift more completely and more beautifully than does marriage. Now, every human relationship really is meant to be image-bearing. I ought to love everybody, right? I mean, I ought to love you, and you ought to love me, and we ought to love them, and we ought to love each other. And that's bearing the image of God. But in no other place do we so completely let down our guard. Or at least, that's how it ought to be. But so often in our culture, no other place do we hurt each other so terribly and so dreadfully than we do in marriage. That's why adultery happens. Fallen humanity comes together, and we want and we need, and like Adam has always done, we look at each other as resources. I got to get my good. I got to avoid my evil. I've got to pursue good for myself and get it. And you have the good I want. I want to be loved by you. I want to be admired by you, and I will take it. And if you don't give it to me, I will demand it. And if you don't give it to me even after I've demanded it, then I will punish you. And is this familiar at all? And if I don't get this from you, maybe I can get it somewhere else. Perhaps I can be satisfied in some other place. Adam's approach to marriage is the most painful thing that there is. But God's approach to marriage is a self-giving relationship, a covenant where I say, I'm not coming to this looking for my needs. I'm coming to this looking for how I can bless you. What is there in me that I can give to you? And how can I make your life rich and full? And if both partners are doing that, man, is it ever wonderful. But if they're not, in all likelihood, somebody's got a screen or another person because we are so hungry. We're not unique. If you go back and you look at the ancient culture, in fact, we're doing a little better than ancient cultures were. You know, in our culture, adultery and commitment in marriage is expected of both the man and the woman. Both male and female are expected to have fidelity. Do you know that's because of Christ? Prior to Christ, the assumption was that women were expected to have absolute fidelity. And men were expected to respect the fidelity of other men's relationships. But other than that, men could have all kinds of liaisons. And that was just fine. A woman couldn't, but a man could. A man could have all kinds of satisfactions of his hunger that a woman was just frankly not allowed. But it wouldn't be considered adultery unless a man had an affair with another man's wife. Those liaisons, that's just what he does. That's true in the Roman world. In the ancient Roman world and its understandings of adultery, only women could really commit adultery. And sadly, that was true in an awful lot of ancient Judaism and their understanding of the Jewish law, because it largely has to do with regulating the behavior of women. I mean, it's got a lot to say about sexual relationships you're not allowed to have. But outside of that, men could do what they wanted. Women had better be true. It's the Christ that shifted that. And He did that by saying, you're reading the law wrong. You don't understand God right. Oh, broken humanity, in your relationships, you don't understand God correctly. You aren't trying to bear the image of God. You're just trying to get satisfied for yourself. You're trying to satisfy your own needs and your own wants and your own desires. And I'm not just talking about the intimacy. I'm talking about our approach to relationship. Love me. Make me feel good about myself. That's why I came into this relationship in the first place. In our culture, we've based all relationships on love. Their culture did it mostly on honor, but it's all the same. It's all me, me, me. Is it any wonder that so many relationships collapse? What Jesus does when He begins to look at the laws about adultery is to strip all that away and to say what really matters is what's going on in you. And are you exercising a relationship of self-gift? We've been looking for a while at the Sermon on the Mount. And today, as we hear Him talk about this commandment, we're hearing Jesus say, don't commit adultery, right? And what He's doing here is He's taking the second of the two commandments that were right at the heart of Judaism. He's dealing with 2 of their top 10. Now, He'll deal with others that were kind of random laws that He picked, and then He'll deal with the ethical heart of Judaism in a bit. But right here, He's dealing with the second of the 10 commandments. And He's showing, look, you can interpret the law this way with all of the 10 commandments, and you can interpret the law this way with all of the law of Moses. So what's the law really about? Remember, the Pharisee drew the line in the sand. As long as I don't step over the line, I'm fine. As long as I stay back here, then I haven't broken the law. And what God cares about is me not breaking the law. So as long as I don't have a relationship that involves intimacy that is illicit, I'm fine. And I can be over here and I can have all kinds of lusts and I can have all kinds of foul desire. And as long as I stay on this side of the line and I don't act on any of that, that's absolutely fine. And if I'm a man, there's all kinds of things that I can do, and that's also fine because it's not adultery. And God said, don't commit adultery. So as long as I don't do that, everything's fine. And if I do, I can expect to be subject to judgment. And the judgment may come in the form of a very angry spouse coming to kill me, or it may be in the form of people taking me outside the city and throwing rocks at me. Something will happen bad to me, so I better stay on this side of the line, huh? What Jesus says, you have heard that it was said to the people long ago, don't commit adultery. And anyone who commits adultery will be subject to judgment. But I say to you, that anyone who looks at a woman to lust after her has already committed adultery with her in his heart. By doing that, he shatters all of male protection, all of male privilege. He just destroys all of that. That's why we think that both people in the couple have got to be true in the relationship, unlike them. But he does an awful lot more than that, because he shifts the focus of adultery from something I do with my body to something I am in my heart. Who am I within? And this is true not only of adultery, but of all of my intimacy and all of my relationship with my spouse. It has shifted the whole relationship. It's not just about have I kept the rules. I've actually heard people talk about this, And what I've heard people talk about and say is, how long can I look before it becomes, to lust after her? If I look at her for just a second and I see her and I recognize that she's pretty, is that bad? Or if I recognize that she's really attractive, is that bad? Is it the second look? That's what it is. That's exactly what the Pharisees did. Don't do that, because it misses the whole point. The whole point is, who am I inside? How am I structured within? Let me ask you, does God suffer from lust? Does God ever look at someone and say, there's an object I'd like to use? No. It's not the nature of God's heart. He's not like that. And He's not like that, not just about physical intimacy, but about anything at all. God never looks at another person and says, there's an object for me to use for myself. There's an object for me to satisfy my wants, my needs, and my desires with. That's not what He does. When God looks at another person, He says, there's a person. There's a person that I made, that I love, that I delight in, that I care about. That's what's in God's heart. So when Jesus shifts it from behavior to heart, what He's doing is saying, what kind of heart do you have? What's going on inside of you? Do you have the heart of God? Do you have the kind of heart that looks at other people and says, I would never use you? You are safe around me because I respect you as a person. You matter. You're worthy of respect. You're worthy of being treated well because you are a person made in God's image. So I'm not going to hunger after you. And to look at my spouse and say, you're not an object for me to satisfy my ego